tonight we have a work session of the planning board to talk about some housing issues. Just for anybody watching or listening, this is informational purposes only kind of session. So we're just here. We've invited a couple developers to come so we can ask questions and just learn more, particularly about workforce housing and any other issues folks have on their minds. Anything from the board before we get started?
I think this is really a listening session for us more than anything, at least to start with. Then we'll have some questions.
And it sounds like Mark forwarded the questions to you gentlemen? Okay,
Yeah.
super.
I had been reading comments coming back as you went along from the residents,
Yes.
and I concluded they really didn't want anything.
That's what it
From
sounds like.
from the
Should have been
survey.
following through with that.
You got that.
So-
And that's true.
Before, hey Paul, before we get started, can you just introduce each of yourselves? Everyone.
I'm Joe Falzoni, a developer. I've been developing in this town since 1999.
And I'm Wayne Morrill from Jones Beach Engineers. We've been doing engineering in the town of Brentwood now for about 35 years.
And we should introduce ourselves.
Sure.
Bruce Stevens.
Doug Marino.
Glenn Greenwood, Town Planner.
Mark Kennedy, Land Use Administrator.
Kristen Aldred, board chair.
Doug Finnan, Planning Board.
Brett Ramsdale.
Paul Kleiman, Select Board Liaison.
So you've had a chance to, at least you've had a chance to look at the survey, the community survey that we did and the responses to get a sense of what folks were saying. We had a community forum earlier in the year and had posters and, you know, people answering questions, talking about different options for housing. Some of the issues are things that we have to comply with the law. And since we had that forum, the law's changed. So we'll need to do some more education and propose some changes. So, hey Liz.
And Steph, introduce
Steph,
yourself.
yeah.
Hi, Steph Kiza, Vice Chair. Sorry I'm late.
Right. So, and then Mark has sent you some questions that board members had prior to the meeting. So do you want to just jump in?
Yeah, when I read through all the material, I still don't understand exactly where you want multifamily. Because when you go up North Road on that right side that's zoned multifamily now, I know every single parcel there. I've dealt with the people that are there. There's a ton of wetland. There's very little opportunity to do anything.
Mm-hmm.
Especially if you attach something that says it's got to be 10 acres or 15 acres. There's just no land there. And then when you get up Route 125, you take a right. I've been studying those parcels all the way to Epping for a long time, having bought some of them in the past. And when I read this, I was uncertain. Are you going to try to rezone the entire length of 125 to allow multifamily?
Mm-hmm.
Because if you don't, there's very little land there. And I know people say, well, there's residential single-family houses on that road, and they want to keep some of that there. Those are going to disappear when Route 125 expands, and those people are going to financially capitalize on that and move somewhere else. But if the opportunity isn't there to do multifamily on that whole strip, there's very little that you can do there.
Mm.
And I didn't sense, or I shouldn't say, I sensed that it was going to be limited to certain sections.
So just one point on that. I have to look at the new law to clarify this if it pertains to multifamily specifically, but the state has preempted us on with regards to residential development in commercial zones. I would have to look again to see if the law had any specifications about multifamily specifically, but residential development in general and commercial zones, the state has preempted us on it.
It's very definitively preempted us on multifamily,
That's
saying
what I thought.
multifamily has to be allowed
Okay.
in your commercial zone.
I wasn't 100% sure,
So from our perspective, our commercial zones are up and down both sides of Route 125, on both sides of Route 27. We have, the only place from my perspective, reading the law, that we can just preempt having to do any multifamily is on Pine Road. Because they say, the law says, if there are considerations such as land uses that aren't good neighbors for residential, then you don't have to do it. And Pine Road is heavy industry and not good neighbors for residential. So that's the only area where I think we will be saying, we're not considering allowing multifamily.
The other thing is, you can't tie a developer's hands so tight that he'll never get to the finish line trying to do what you want him to do. Like, I see some language in there that says, some of the board members want to know financially the details. Well, why do you have to know that when it's a fact that when you're, and I've done this, when you're doing multifamily and you're doing affordable units, you don't make any money on the affordable units. You make it on a density factor that allows you to subsidize those units. And that's how the town will get them. I would never, as a developer, want to be tied with that I got to show you every penny I spent. I'm already tied to what the affordable rate is, and I have to back into that. We sold units in Rye on the multifamily project we did at the corner of Washington, where we were selling units for $700,000, and we had to sell the other ones for $400,000. And they had to be the same or similar in size, but in the interior, we didn't have to give them a $10,000 Wolf stove or a huge refrigerator, but it had to be like kind. And that's what subsidized us to be able to do that. And the other thing is, I see that there's talk about 6 units density. There has been talk about that. I don't see, or haven't read in the literature that I have, is if someone was gonna give 20% affordable, is that 20% above the 6 units? Because you have to do the math to factor it in. Because if it isn't, then you're taking away from the source of the money. Now, most towns do say that you have to round up. In other words, if you're at 1.6 units, you gotta give the 2 units. So in a project that would be, just as an example, a 30-unit project, you'd have to give 6 units in addition to the 6 units that you get. Because if not, a developer can't figure out what he's getting. And I don't know if you've talked about that. Is it 6 units? In that total number, you give 20% more in affordable?
Yes.
Yeah, I think the big question, it's not necessarily that anybody needs to see, kind of your books, but the big question is, what's the density number where it makes sense, where you would do a project? So if it's, 6 units and then 2 additional have to be workforce housing, does that work? Or does it have to be, 10 and 12 or 8 and whatever?
Well, the other thing that I read, and we've already done, I think you're also tying it to, you can't exceed the load capacity for a septic system.
Correct.
The other thing that happens is, when you get above 18 units in this state for water, because you can do 9 multifamily units on one well, you then got to go into a community water system. Well, a community water system, I can tell you the one that we're doing now on Mill Road came to over $600,000. So if you don't get the density you're never gonna get larger projects on parcels of land. Because, and maybe that's what you wanna do, maybe you don't want larger 50-unit, 40-unit, but you need to get to a much higher unit count in order to subsidize the water, because you don't have any municipal services here.
Right.
And
Or sewer.
you can shield the multifamily unit by doing the buffer along 125, for instance. I mean, you got buildings out there that are practically on the road now. They're unsightly, the commercial buildings. So those, you gotta lean to thinking about how does someone get to the finish line in a reasonable permitting process? And again, I say, what's the difference of how much money the developer's making if he's tied to what the state says what an affordable unit is? Because it could be $400,000 this year, and next year it could be $360,000 if something happens in the marketplace, and you still got to give the affordable units.
I didn't understand what you were speaking to when you said that that somebody was asking for your financial information. You're speaking to the affordable,
Right.
unaffordable, okay.
When I read this language, I left with understanding that you want to see financial performance. And I don't know if it was coming from you.
Yeah.
That's going to be a real problem. First of all, I've never seen that. And I've done rezonings. I did the 80 units that are going up in Auburn right now. Those are age restricted over 55. But I just don't know, I don't know how that would help you. What are you going to say to the developer? You're making too much money? Or what if he's not making enough money?
That's what we would be concerned about,
Right.
if he wasn't making enough money.
Exactly. And that's, I don't think that really was my intent versus understanding what that break line is for you to be attracted to come in.
Density.
Density.
And a reasonable way to back into it. I mean, you got a reasonable formula to start with.
Yep.
And you really have a checks and balance now by your saying that, let's just say you could do 6 units per upland acre after you do the formula. You're going one step further and saying you can't do it if you don't meet the soil loading requirements, even after you do everything that you do. And that's going to happen, especially on really wet sites. Again, I'm just throwing it out for you to think about. If you really want to do this, you got to make it financially attractive for someone to do it.
I'm sorry, I don't think a lot of us saw the questions that had come into Mark, since our meeting last week, so I'm trying to think, puzzling here. When did we ever demand or ask the developer to?
That was
We
one,
didn't.
that was one of the questions that I received via
Okay,
email.
Okay.
I sent it out to Joe. Joe responded to the email, and then I think I resent it to everybody.
Okay,
I
guess
think
didn't
everybody
look- I
got the
didn't-
responses, correct? Yeah, and Joe asked for some clarity on that picture, so I gave him what the ordinances that we are working on, so he could review them and
Sure.
give comment on them. And I think that's what he's doing right now. I think you've gone through all that documentation, and you're compiling that in your head, and you're giving comment on it. Now, we've had a few conversations about density, and I realize that it's very parcel specific. It's the same density calculation doesn't work on parcel A than parcel B. So what number would you suggest to this board that A, would work for developers in general, without listing a very specific parcel?
I think from all the input that I read from everyone, I think that 6 is doable with the formula, but I think you have to allow 6 plus that 20% of the affordable to make it work.
Yeah, because we've had conversations before, and you've thrown out the number 10 and 2.
Right.
Be a density of 10 with a bonus of 2.
And I think having up to 20 units to a building,
Mm-hmm.
or having the flexibility to do townhouses at the limit that you say, like there's 6 connecting units, it might be 8. That gives a lot of flexibility to be able to do it based upon site conditions.
So it's very constructive, and I think that helps this board out a lot.
Yeah, I gotta say, 6 and 2,
Yeah.
from my perspective, much lower than I thought we were gonna be talking about.
Yeah, 100%.
In my discussions with Mark Frazier, away from the planning board, we've really been focusing on 10 and 2
Yeah.
as being the more reasonable way to ensure that we will see something happening.
Well, you're gonna have to, I mean, my greatest success has been assembling parcels. I mean, I'm just doing one now, it's a small one, and down, I had to buy it from 7 different people, to get it to work. So there's a lot of legwork, because there's some small parcels out there connected to another parcel, and some of them you gotta buy with a building on it and knock the building down.
Right.
For instance, on Route 125, to make it work.
Sorry. You mentioned North Road earlier, and a couple of years ago, the board got maps out, and we did that. We went through all the parcels, and we looked at our ordinance and said, oh, there's only one parcel. So we've been talking about changing that, because I think it's a 20-acre minimum. What?
No, that's unrealistic.
Right. So what is more realistic?
But can you be
We-
successful on a 4-acre parcel?
Maybe not a 4-acre parcel, but I think from 5 above, you could be, provided you don't come up with this crazy, when I say this would be crazy, if you had a 5-acre parcel and you said you gotta put a 100-foot buffer around it, well, you're taking away a big portion of the land. Versus what I read in here seems reasonable, 50 feet. I see that you've gone up you gotta have 100 feet of frontage on a Class 5 road. That may, in some instances, be a problem, but you then also have language in here that you'll look at case by case, the circumstances of the site. Because, I see some sites, for instance, that have 72 feet of frontage, and then they go out and they branch out. Well, you're not gonna see any of the units because you don't get to the land until you get back. So that would be excluded automatically because you've gone up to 100 feet of frontage.
It sounds like,
I mean, that's
You're-
good, that's great guidance.
Yeah.
That's great guidance.
and it sounds like it's reasonable to require visual buffers
Oh,
from
yeah.
the road. Yeah.
Especially if you wanna get, I mean, this is a sought-after town. People would wanna live here, rent here, and be here. Even on Route 125, if it's set back and screened, that takes a lot of money to do, unless there's natural vegetation. But take a look at the wetlands on that strip.
Yeah,
There's a lot of wetlands.
there's a
It's not-
lot of wetlands.
It's not encouraging.
Yeah,
There's a lot of wetlands, but there's a lot of potential for redevelopment because there are some suspect properties on 125 that they're fine businesses right now, but they're likely not going to last very long in the future.
there's a considerable amount.
They really are.
There's not a lot of 20-acre parcels.
Exactly. No, I think that I think, maybe we really haven't talked about this a lot, but I think we've evolved beyond that concept. I don't think that that's, is that a constraint for board members? Are we stuck in the idea that multifamily has to happen
Yeah.
on 20 acres? I don't think so.
I thought when we looked at those
I thought
maps, we
that's-
realized
I
that
don't
was
think so at all.
reasonable.
We
trying to
understand that,
change that.
yeah, that there's a ton, that's way in our past. That's
So
way in our past.
how are you gonna look at, are you gonna set a distance back from 125 that you can do this type of use? Or is it gonna be, because I think I talked to you, Mark, parcel specific.
Mm-hmm.
If it's commercial now, you can do it on that. If the lot is residential now, you can't do it on that?
No, with the new state legislation, it really wipes that,
Yeah.
that wipes that away. They're all treated the
does.
same.
It
And I
does.
think that was the intent of the state legislation, that
definitely was.
It
all
definitely-
property, commercially, zoned and residentially zoned shall be treated the same.
Yep.
So that wipes all that away. Now, the setback on 125 is really predicated by the state of New Hampshire. It's that 125 feet building setback.
I mean, in,
Is that because it's a state highway?
in Kingston,
They're
the state of New
anticipating
Hampshire
growth in Wyoming.
asked the town of Kingston and the town of Plastow to change their front yard setback to 100 feet when they were working on the 125 corridor that they worked on for 25 years. We had already established in Brentwood, when I started here in '87, that it's 125 feet. But the 125 feet doesn't seem unreasonable to me unless the parcel is a constrained parcel.
Right. agree.
Because some of the parcels go all the way back to our Fremont property line, you know, the joint line with Fremont. So there, for some of them, there's tons of space. In that 125 feet, I don't think will have any impact on a developer. But I think that we need to consider that maybe this only works when the existing businesses out front are allowed to stay and multifamily is allowed to go out behind them. And so we need to be cognizant that we have to put that flexibility into our ordinance.
Yeah.
I just got back from Ireland, and I saw an email coming from someone that I know, and the family has a parcel, you know, Route 125, and they have access to it, and it's a good piece of land. But they don't have sufficient frontage. But out front, there's a building, which is the exact same situation. But it's great because it's probably 400 feet back, where you could do a nice development.
Something, yeah.
And no one would see it. The other thing I did, and I did this a while back in this town, and I did it in 4 or 5 other towns, is if you take a close look at parcels that this town owns a couple on Route 125. And they have other parcels that potentially could be used where if there was an agreement between the developer and the town to put the land in, the town could ask for more units in that case.
Yeah.
Because the basis of the land would become something totally different. Because
We have done an inventory of that too, and a lot of those have restrictions on them. And the town also needs to have space for cemeteries. So that's part of what they're looking at too.
Well, I know you have 2 on 125. I don't know how good they are, but I just saw them listed when I was looking at it. I don't know if they were taken for taxes or not.
Yeah, I know the one that you're particularly talking about, and I believe that was one of the reasons. There are a few in town that are viable building lots, and the town of Brentwood needs to decide what they want to do with them. But lands,
You're saying those that are owned by the town,
yeah.
because you've looked at them for the idea for the safety complex?
Yes, that was part of that exploratory, and the cemetery.
We
One
sent
of them, I
to
think, the
Resilient.
developer, the person who owns the property next door to it should probably buy and use them in conjunction with that large business. There's a lot of potential there.
Doug, sorry.
But I
So-
think it's only 3 acres, the one that, 2.5, something like that. Yes.
One thing I just wanted to note, you know, because we're talking a lot about the potential of new development on 125, but from what I've sort of been hearing through the grapevine, there are some communities where they have been, since the new law was passed, where there's been talk that some businesses in commercial zones actually are considering using their existing structure to rent out space to tenants if they have extra space. So I just want to throw that out there as well. In addition to new development, there's also, I don't know if there are any businesses on 125 that would fall in that category, but there may be some that have extra space and could use the extra money if they would be willing to rent out some space to tenants. Because I've heard that in some communities that's something that is being discussed. So just
Or
wanted to throw
dividing
that out there.
a larger building into.
Yeah.
Correct.
Revital.
Yeah, like for instance, like some businesses where I don't remember the specific ones, but there was one I heard about where they really only use the downstairs portion, and so they're talking about maybe renting out the second floor for a couple, not a lot, but a few units.
Yeah.
So I just wanted to throw that out there because with the residential development and commercial, it's certainly new development is a big portion of it, but there also, we could see in the near term some movement with some of the existing structures if there are any businesses that might be amenable to that. I don't know if there are on 125. I really don't, but so.
When I looked at the part where you talked about you could do duplexes, there are some large chunks of land that the town owns. Again, I haven't run the titles on them, and I'm talking about 30 or 40 acres. Where that could be done, the developer would have to buy some adjoining parcels to get in there. But I think in order for you to sell those, it would take a town meeting vote, which may be.
Yeah, and I think I mean, you can correct me, but I think the large ones are open space. They're protected. They're not available
there's-
conservation. Yeah, they're not
There's one off of South Road, it's quite large, but it is deed restricted. Part of the deed where it was gifted to the town of Brentwood specifically states that it would remain open land unless the town of Brentwood needed to build something on it. It would you only could put a structure on it that would serve the town of Brentwood.
And that probably would need to be a town meeting thing.
Yeah, well, it specifically says that in the deed, and of course, you'd have to go to town meeting to appropriate the money to build
And
anything.
that piece is extremely wet and watering the river, so you've got a big wetland setback from the river. That's the Martin property you're speaking to.
I believe it's next to the Martin property.
Yes.
Yeah, because there's two parcels, one that has been put into conservation,
Well, that
and
was
the other one was put under using the same guidelines as how they are going to maintain the property, that they use the same guidelines, but it is not in conservation. It's gifted to the town of Brentwood and is deed restricted to only building town facilities on it.
Really?
Yes.
On
It-
what road?
Everybody got confused about that parcel because it says that we're gonna use the same maintenance plan as the property next door, conservation maintenance plan. And everybody thought conservation maintenance plan must mean that it's conserved, but certainly is not. If you look at the deed and you look at the title, it is not. They gave it to the town of Brentwood and deed restricted it to only buildings that serve the town of Brentwood can be built on it. So it is a buildable lot for the town of Brentwood, not placed in conservation.
Well, it'd be wise to go back over that list and take a second look at that list that was compiled a number of years ago.
Well, no, we did that pretty recently for resilience. We had a spreadsheet because he went through and he marked some, and then we had to go back and tell him actually that one's been earmarked for a cemetery, or that one's definitely conservation. Or
Some of
we
these
have that spreadsheet.
Some of these parcels owned by the town of Brentwood are like 0.25 acres. They're a little strip of something that is inconsequential.
Now, I came across one parcel, I know the family, and it involved a court case years ago about access to it, Route 125. And they won the court case. The problem is, it's a right-of-way for a road. It doesn't have any legal frontage, but it has the right, to go in. It's set way, way back. You wouldn't be able to see the units. And I don't know if a case came in like that in front of you, if there's enough flexibility where if it met all the other requirements and had legal access to get in and get out, whether that would be anything you'd look at or not.
That would have to go through the ZBA, Mr. Greenwood?
I'd have to know more about it.
Yeah, we'd have to.
But if the right of way is of an adequate size to construct a road, then they'd get frontage from their road.
They don't own the right-of-way. You know, because it went back years and years ago that they
Yeah.
always used it.
Yeah.
It was a court fight. They won that they can use that for their tax system.
You have thoughts?
So, yeah, so, I mean, one of the things that we do a lot is do a lot loading calculations, and that's just with county soils. You can do that like with any parcel that you have out there. You can figure out what your loading capacity is. That sort of tells us what the units are. But what we see a lot of towns doing is they do site-specific soils on top of that. Make sure that you verify it because those county soils are pretty broad. So, you know, if the town was looking to make sure that you have a second check on that, I would say do site-specific soils so that you can actually verify lot by lot what the actual loading capacity is, so that you, because I'll give you a, for instance, we have a site in Epping that we did the county soils, it came up to like 15,000 gallons. Then we did the site-specific and it only came up to 12,000. So just knowing how much density that
Yeah, that's a
you
big
want.
difference.
What's that?
That's a big difference.
That's a big difference. So it really, if you're, the New Hampshire DES just looks at the county soils, and that's how they say how many gallons per day can that lot be. So if you're trying to densify lots, you could use the county soils and not have any other estimates or anything done, but you're gonna be like, there's a site right in your town that comes up with 160 bedrooms, and right now the zoning only allows for 5 houses. So, you know, we would like to densify those kind of lots, and those kind of lots are, you know, in your commercial district and stuff, so. You know, make sure that you can, at the end of the day, you can get your fruits. And Joe's right, I mean, these well radiuses go crazy once you get over a certain amount of units. Those well systems can cost a lot of money, so having enough density to put that infrastructure in is really important for a project, especially when you get into the larger ones.
Once you go over that 9 units and you have to have a community well, what is that number
But
of
you can have
units
2
before?
9. You can have 2.
Yeah.
You can do 18 units. 9
With 2
on
wells?
one site.
Okay.
But you can't circumvent that, but like cutting off a lot and coming back a year later and saying, I want to do 9 more, you can't do that. So once you get above that 18, now you've got a 600,000 plus, and it's climbing because everything goes up in
Yeah.
price. You need a big enough plan to do a big enough plan development. And when you talk about loading, if you had a 40-acre site and it was going to be multifamily, you do the loading on the whole
Property.
the whole property.
Yeah, wetlands included.
Right.
A quick question about the community well system. Along with the community well comes along certain standards or checks along the way, meaning you have to do I believe, I could be corrected, you have to do a pump down test on it. You need to monitor surrounding homeowners' wells for changes within that aquifer while you're doing that. Those checks along the way that help protect surrounding homeowners' wells are not present if you don't do a community water system. I'm just thinking of how the community, the surrounding community from these developments can be protected. And I think that's one of the things that's so costly about community waters is the standards that they put on them to protect the community around it.
And there's a lot of engineering cost before you get to doing the install. And then you're required to hire an independent water company to run it, test it, submit all the documentation annually or every 6 months. You're out there testing it. And you have nothing to do with that. It has to be independent. And that's, we had to do that.
None of those barriers are there if you don't have to meet the community water.
Correct,
You leave that in the hands of the homeowners association, I'm
correct.
assuming. Okay.
But you're talking, if it's that, you're talking a small number of units then, they're,
Yeah, it sounds 18. If you're under 18, because you can put in 2 wells, is what you're saying? You can put 2 wells in, 1 well
Still
does
gotta do
9,
the
1 well does
radiuses,
9.
so you're losing the land.
Yeah,
You gotta do the radiuses, you
Right.
know?
yeah, the bigger
What
the
is the,
well.
what's the biggest multifamily development you've done? Is it in Barrington?
150. Liberty Tree Mall in Danvers.
Oh.
Oh,
For town water and sewage, town
Yeah, town water,
infrastructure.
we had town water and sewer. It was an onion farm, if you can believe that. Big, big
Hmm.
onion.
what about, sorry, what about septic, in terms of density and cost?
You
and
go
all that?
by the rules and you get there and, you know, you can use innovative systems that when needed. But that's one of the first things you're gonna do. It's like I go to these people and they wanna sell me 100 acres. They divide 2 acres into the 100 and they think they got 50 lots. Well, then you go out and you do the septic system and there's only 10. So you gotta do that type of work and spend that type of money to prove it out.
Mhm. Have you done any, like a larger commercial septic system that supports
Yeah,
how
well,
many units?
yeah, on our age restricted, those are all central systems.
Yeah.
We got 5 systems there supporting 71 units, and we have 5 systems on North Road supporting 119 units.
Hmm.
You know, broken up into
Yeah.
central fields,
Yeah.
leach fields.
So 20,
Those large
Yes.
systems also have nitrate setbacks you have to deal with, so you have well radiuses, nitrate setbacks. I mean, it squeezes the development really quick.
And another problem that we ran into here in Brentwood is only because it was costly. You gotta know if the town, when you mapped it, it's prime wetlands, because we crossed a small strip of prime wetlands at 3 ponds. It cost us a fee of $186,000 to the state of New Hampshire. So that's a killer on a big site, if you're crossing prime wetlands.
mhm.
Is that mitigation money?
Mitigation. You know, we didn't have a line item for that.
But
that's
that's
a
not-
state, that's a state.
That's not that much money.
Yeah, it's not that much. We did the BJ's down in Seabrook, and it cost us $3.5 million to fill that, put BJ's out there, so that was just the ongoing payment. So,
wow. Is that right?
But that's not a town thing, I mean, that's the state.
state.
But the town is the one that instituted that. I think they hired Mark West, right?
They absolutely did.
Yeah.
Conservation Commission. Yep.
You can't prevent what it is, Mr. Val.
We have a lot of wetlands. Other questions?
So just in general, from your long history here in Brentwood riding, you told me once, and I always remember it, that essentially you're kind of like a treasure hunter. And that was kind of funny, and I always remember that. Not in a bad way, but I mean, you're looking, you're just being aware of what's out there.
Yeah.
So with your understanding of 125, and we are talking about from 111A north, both sides of the road to be considered this multifamily, do you see potential for development there based on market values and cost, say in the next decade?
Yeah, I do, but it's just, it's the law of averages. It's, sometimes I'll send out 50 letters, and I'll get 1 response back. You know?
But I guess I'm more interested, do you think that the underlying soils were so much of that? I mean, probably Jim Hayden from Soil Conservation used to tell us that 5/8 of that stretch was wetland property, not specific to parcels, but in aggregate. Of course, you've got Spruce Swamp to the west of 125. And there's a lot like around the Smith Farm there, just north of the power lines as you head north on 125 from 111A. That's incredibly wet out there. There's really no potential there on that large 150-acre farm.
When I left the North Shore of Boston, meaning Boston up to the New Hampshire border, I had read a detailed study that said by the year 2025, which
And
not-
we're here now.
Listen, there's gonna be nothing but frontage lots, ledge, no big developments. That's why I come up, I bought 1,000 acres, before they were doing 101 on the off ramps, all very, very reasonable, a couple of $100 an acre. And that's what pushed me up here, but it keeps doing that, further and further out to get good land. But you're seeing it now, even here. People are moving further and further out. When I went to Nottingham 25 years ago, they thought I was crazy. Now Nottingham is like Brentwood. How many people really want to live there?
And there's a lot of ledge there too.
There's a lot, Ledge Farm Road, I
Yeah.
did that one.
So I think Brentwood has to, I mean, we as a board realize that we have to be responsible to townspeople and to state law. So I think that's why we are trying to chart this course forward to allow some of the things that are required. I mean, they're required by state law anyway.
Yeah, no one's ever gonna use your existing multifamily, so you don't have to.
Never.
You
never.
could give them the land and they couldn't do it.
But we're trying to, on the workforce housing, you know, whether or not we have a workforce housing ordinance, the spirit of the law says that there have to be reasonable opportunities. And that's kind of what we're trying to get at is, are we offering reasonable opportunities so that we are compliant with the law? And we think the ADUs do some of that because that allows basically a second unit on every lot in town. But now, you know, we're looking at the multifamily and, you know, 125 in Northwood.
What's your experience with that? How do you think that's going to affect real estate values and sales of property? Can you imagine building a development and having an ADU on every lot?
Not on every lot, but I remember growing up as a kid outside of Boston, when you could have, I mean, there was a lot of Italian and Irish and Jewish families, and they wanted their parents to live with them when they got older. And a lot of them would sneak in and get away with it, because the building inspectors were more flexible, and they'd put basement units. Now, they've come to the thought that this is a good thing. And you can camouflage them, and you can do it very aesthetically. And you just got to give them enough square footage, because a lot of the parents are coming from a big house. Like I saw one town, 600 to 700 square feet. But that's just not enough room.
I think this current state law is 900. You got to, was it a minimum of 900? You can't restrict beyond 900.
You can't restrict.
You're right.
950.
Square feet.
And I think that the ADU piece, kind of what I was mentioning earlier with the commercial development, this is another piece where I think that in the immediate future, we might see some existing structures be converted rather. In the long term, and I mean, and I've said this before, I think in the long term, we should be pursuing, like doing what Dover is doing and working with Service. So in Dover, they're working with Service Credit Union on ADU financing options and things like that. I think that's something that we're going to have to consider. But in the short term, there are a lot of existing structures that may be utilized for that reason. And I think that it's particularly applicable for Brentwood because there are plenty of people here who, you know, are ready to downsize but want to stay in town, and maybe, you know, they have kids who would be willing to take the house, and then the parents move into an accessory dwelling.
So one of the things with ADUs is, you know, that's great for families and everything, but once the ADU's there, it could be a rental too.
Correct.
It's true.
The town of Alton, I brought this for the board, they actually have ADUs that have to fall into a short-term rental type of criteria. So that you have certain criteria that are set up for the ADU so that you don't have hundreds of rental properties all through the community of Brentwood. So I brought this so that Glenn and Mark can have that, to look at how Alton addresses ADUs, and making sure there's things in place so that you don't have a town with ADUs on every single lot.
But how would the law restrict that?
Yeah, because the state of New Hampshire's
Yeah.
legislation is extremely clear that you cannot put any restrictions upon the ADU that don't apply to the house,
Right.
the main
Any
house.
aesthetic restriction.
Aesthetic restrictions.
They're just
No,
aesthetic.
it doesn't- Yeah, and
But in my opinion,
Can't.
limiting that really limits the whole point of an ADU.
Well, it's like making sure that you have a parking space, making sure the septic is there,
Oh,
all the
oh,
different
oh.
things that you need. So it just,
Oh, I
it's
see.
not
Okay.
limiting the amount, it's just making sure that they adhere to certain regulations.
No, standards,
that
of
have-
course. Yeah, of course, yeah.
I can see how that play in. If you were building a new development, single-family houses, homes, and you were to incorporate an ADU as part of the building process, I can see some economics there. But the hard part is for a lot of seniors, I mean, somebody like myself, for example, if they have if they have a decent-sized home and they do want to downsize, very few of them, and some of them may do it for income, some rental income to allow them to stay in town. But I know from personal experience building ADU for my mother, even having well and septic connections to the existing parcel, I mean, it's still $300,000 today. It would be a little more economical if you could incorporate that into a building plan for a subdivision. But to go back and do it post-action, post-building and selling the home,
It's more expensive.
it's very expensive. You got, driveway, you got water and sewer connections.
You know, you hear everyone say that a lot of your children can't live in the same town. What's wrong with them having a second unit that's disguised if they eventually have to rent it out? It's not like they're doing a development with a ton of people moving in. And they're vested, if it's their house, they're gonna make sure they have a tenant that takes care of it, or they're gonna evict them. But it's gonna allow some children that couldn't live in a community to be able to live.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, that's the whole reason the state felt comfortable taking that power away from the towns.
100%.
And just said, this is how it's gonna be, folks. Jump on or get the hell out of the way. But the most cognizant thing out of the state taking this over, from my perspective, the one thing they got right was saying you can build a new home with an accessory structure attached to it. That, because a lot of towns hold to the premise that if it's accessory, the one dwelling has to be there first. And we're saying that. They were telling builders, you can't do that. And the state legislature heard that enough and said, no, they can be built at the time of the first building going in. And that's, I give them lots of credit for that, and I hate them for everything else they did. But I do like that.
You know what the value of that rental property is on a monthly basis, so that really plays into the person's eligibility for a loan to begin with.
Right.
Yeah.
I think the multifamily, I know we probably don't have a lot of time, but the 6 units, I think that's a big threshold for us to cross. And certainly I reread the HOP survey that you guys did. And, now we have one home on 2 acres of land. So people are resistant if they think about what resilience originally spoke to, 10 to 12 units per acre. I mean, we got to sell this. You can do all the talking you want, but unless you can educate people and get buy-in from the community, it's kind of a non-starter.
Yeah, and you're never gonna satisfy all those
No.
wants.
That we're not, but our best argument is we're not asking for them to intrude into what is sort of the heart of the residential part of town, which is not Route 125 and is not Route 27. And ensure those folks that are very hesitant that that is what the goal is, that multifamily is going to be coming to Brentwood, but it is not going to be infiltrating the single-family neighborhoods that are so important to so many people here in town.
Well, and we have to do this by law, and if we
We have
don't,
to.
then
We're screwed.
something,
We can be sued.
So would we really be advocating for eight units per acre? Because you're saying 6 plus 2.
Well, 20%, whatever the matter is.
We haven't finalized that.
Well, no, but that's what we will have to finalize.
I mean,
Very shortly.
if you're taking this to the March town meeting.
Yep.
You gotta do that quick.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
If you go down to 4 units, you're not gonna get the results that you want. And you have enough language built into there that you have discretion. And you're gonna know if you're being buffaloed when someone comes in there, with some scheme that doesn't make any sense.
I mean, if 6 and 2 works, that's marvelous. I've had people tell me that they're hesitant that 6 and 2 works. And that's why I've been sort of advocating that we talk about higher numbers than that. I don't want Brentwood to do something that isn't responsible. I just don't want us to do what we've already done, and that is put it in a multifamily ordinance. That didn't work.
Right.
We only put in the one we put in because we were going to lose in court. MSP was gonna beat us on a lawsuit.
Well, in affordability, we still run that risk right now for a builder's remedy. So maybe 6 and 2, I mean, we got to go out and do a hell of a lot of education, but I was really taken back to read the 10 to 12 that Resilience was originally talking to, because to tell somebody that we're going to go from 1 home per acre to 10 to 12, they're going to say, you guys are out to lunch, I mean, there's just no way.
But it's
But
not
again, it's like Glenn said, we're talking about the commercial.
the commercial
No,
district in an
certainly. But even-
entirely different kind of housing unit.
But it's that initial shock for most people who've grown up in basically a residential town, even in the commercial zone, to see 10 to 12, because the arguments are going to be, it's going to expand our school population, you're going to, cause financial ruin to the town.
You know what?
Let's not.
A good proportion are gonna say that anyway.
Yeah, let's not pre-argue
Well, I mean,
against
that's
ourselves.
that's the argument.
We've heard, yeah, I
Our
know.
Argument's already in here.
We've heard them. Hey, Resilience started at 24, so.
I think that's a wonderful place to start, 6 and 2.
Yeah.
I'm hoping we can wrap that into a mixed-use ordinance as well. I think that's a very viable thing for 125, to have businesses in the front, housing in the back. That's been done for centuries, and I think that's a wonderful thing that we could probably wrap that into.
Protects the
I
town.
don't think you're gonna get overwhelmed, because naturally you don't have.
Yeah,
a
we
lot of
don't,
good
we don't have
land.
water, we
I
don't have
know.
sewer, and we have a lot of
We
wet.
don't have water and sewer, so.
Yeah. I think maybe even with, if you did allow a higher density, I don't know with the size of the septic, that's all you'd have to have for that type of density, eating up so much uplands. I don't know if there's that much uplands available on 125. So,
Well, the septic's got to go in the uplands, obviously.
yeah.
I can
Does it always
I
have
can,
to?
I can see everybody on this side. I can't see you guys. So, Paul, Brett, do you guys have any, Doug, have any questions?
My big thing was the density, and yes, I was one of the ones that sent in, the picture of the ordinance in talking about, cost associated with, because,
Brent, can you maybe just move your mic a little closer?
because if someone came in and said they wanted 10 plus 2, well, what's the margin on something like that? How, are we just taking you at your word? And I think that's why the language was there, to check the figures to see if it's actually a viable thing. But 6 and 2 to me is a more agreeable thing. So that answered my big question.
Yeah, I think the word's got out to townspeople, we have to do something.
Mhm. Yeah.
We're just protecting the town. I mean, that's the bottom line.
I think you're doing a great job here and doing your due diligence.
Paul?
I think that's wonderful.
Just echo what Brett just said, that it's, definitely a palatable, more reasonable approach.
Your challenge is gonna be to get enough bodies at town meeting to pass whatever you
Well,
conclude.
this'll go to, this'll be a vote, yeah, a Tuesday
Be
night vote,
ballot,
so.
paper.
Then it's the educational piece.
Yeah.
Public questions, you're an alternate. You're welcome. We could have invited you up here. Not.
Mhm.
Anything else? I guess we have to give up our room? Is
No.
that
We have some other things on the agenda that.
what do
Well,
we do?
We can postpone the budget conversation.
Okay.
Well, first of all, thank you guys for
Yeah.
coming tonight.
Yes,
Really
thank you,
Very much
both.
appreciated.
Yep.
That was-
Appreciate you
this was
taking your
really
time.
Very kind of you guys, so thank you.
Yeah. Good information.
You sign.
Yeah, do we have to give up the room?
Yeah, they're in at 6:30. I hear people in the hall.
Yeah.
Yeah, let me.
Because I mean, I wouldn't mind talking about.
No questions, Steph?
No, you guys covered it all.
What Tuesday night vote were you?
It's not a, this wouldn't be a warrant article, it'd be on the ballot, like a regular, you know, all voters, not town meeting.
So I guess we'll propose, they want the meeting room at 6:30. They'll give us a few extra minutes. It's not a big deal. But the budget conversation, I think, is going to take more time than we really have. So unfortunately, we'll have to push that to October 2nd, if that's
So,
okay.
just so everybody's aware, we got our bill from Rockingham Planning Commission, and it went up 4%, and we had only budgeted for 2.5%. So it's really, you know, it's probably only a couple $100 that we're talking about, but we'll have to
200.
move things around a bit
Bakes.
to make that work.
What was the zoning calendar?
Microphone, please, sir.
The zoning calendar for, in terms of public hearings, when can we have, what's the latest that we can have a first public hearing? We always want to have time to make
Right, for-
changes.
Yeah, I mean,
So-
for us, it's literally like the first week of January, but we can't think about that. We have to be having public hearings on this in November and December.
Oh, absolutely. That's what I'm thinking. How quick do we have to have some language? We have to have
Yeah.
some language.
I
There-
think we're close,
We're close, and we're meeting with Resilience again on the,
next
The
meeting.
next meeting.
Next meeting, okay.
We can do another special meeting?
I don't think so.
No?
I think just as long as everybody, so before the first October meeting, reads the latest drafts. Do we have them, or are they?
Yeah, they sent them to us
Okay.
last week, so.
Other than maybe 6 and 2, read them thoroughly before that meeting so that you can ask questions, because we probably should make any final tweaks and then start thinking about public hearings.
But will Resilience actually draft some of that language?
oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, that is their responsibility.
What they're doing.
Yeah,
With your oversight.
Yeah,
obviously.
with the board.
with your permission, I would like to send Crystal and Mark and Steve an email with that figure in mind,
6 and 2?
6 and 2.
if that's what
I
I
think that
see
seems
everyone.
acceptable.
And I don't know what everyone else thinks, but I think we should set the cluster thing aside. I think we should focus on
There's nothing really going to
workforce,
change other than the name.
commercial multifamily, and ADUs.
And workforce.
Workforce,
Yeah.
commercial multifamily, and ADUs.
Yes.
We don't want to deal with we do not need to deal with that. Yes?
Hi, Liz Freya, South Road. There was a question somebody put forward about the dues to our Rockingham County Planning
Mhm.
and whether we should continue doing that. Do we think that's definitely a thing to continue since we're not even on?
Yes,
next-
we all discussed it at the meeting.
Okay.
You
It
had
might have, it
left
might have been when
early.
I left early and
Yep.
listened to it, but you decided that was a
Yeah.
good thing to keep
It
on
may,
doing.
it may be too that we should look at taking advantage more of some of those things that they do offer, because they do offer free planning assistance in addition to what they do regionally. that we-
So what, I'm not really sure, I know there's 3 of you on it. What is it that they really do for the town?
Actually, there's a memo that's out that they sent, didn't they? And thanking us with a breakdown as
Okay.
to exactly what they do. It's in the emails.
It's in the emails from Mark. Okay. All right, thank you.
There's actually a commissioner from Portsmouth that wrote it as chairman of the RPC.
That's correct.
Beth
Yep,
Morrow.
Beth.
Okay, thanks.
And if you have any questions, all
and-
3 of us.
All right.
Liz, you may want to even go to a meeting. We'll let you know when that's up.
Motion.
When there's an
In your,
RPC meeting.
in your, excuse me, in your packet, you'll see the request for proposal from Glenn. Review that, please. More discussion will take place on October 2nd. I sent the letter out to owner of the Tanya Lane subdivision, Rob Healy, and I also sent that letter to town council,
With my stuff.
Sam.
who will give it to his council.
Okay, and at the same time, we got a letter asking for another site visit to look at.
I
paving.
sent you an email from the engineer Wayne Morrell regarding roadway acceptance. You'll see within that email that they request any unpaid bills be sent. So you know what I'm gonna send.
Yes.
So
Ah.
that letter came
Before they
before they received this.
got our letter.
So I think that.
Correct.
Requested presently.
I will look into with Julie of how to create that invoice, or should I just send them that invoice
Just do
directly?
whatever you normally do.
Yeah, just send the
Yeah.
invoice.
That's what I was, yeah, that's what I was gonna
All right.
do.
Anything else, quick?
Nope. Motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn?
So moved.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Well, thank you very much.
Thanks.
Thanks for doing this.
Yep. Yeah.